It was a quiet, sunlit morning when the thunder of engines shattered the stillness of Maple Ridge, a sleepy town where nothing ever changed. The sound rolled through the empty streets like a storm approaching, rattling diner windows and stirring every curious soul inside. Moments later, a pack of bikers roared into the gravel lot, black leather glinting in the harsh morning light. And at the front of them rode Rex Malone, a man whose very name carried the weight of stories most folks were too afraid to tell. He didn't need to speak to be heard. His presence alone demanded silence. With eyes weathered by 1,000 miles and regrets carved deep beneath his scars, he looked like a man forged by both road and remorse. Some feared him. Some respected him, but no one truly knew him. And if you believe that even the roughest hearts can still show kindness, that everyone deserves a second chance, then take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner, where real stories of compassion come alive. Inside the diner, the soft clinking of coffee cups faded as the bikers took their seats. Conversation died mid-sentence. The air, once filled with the hum of old country music, now felt thick, like the town itself was holding its breath. Behind the counter moved a young waitress named Mara. Her smile was polite, but her eyes told another story, the story of someone who hadn't slept right in weeks. She was maybe 30, carrying a quiet weariness that no amount of caffeine could hide. When she leaned forward to pour Rex's coffee, the morning light caught something beneath her foundation, a faint bruise along her jawline, just visible enough to betray the truth she tried so hard to cover. Rex noticed. He didn't stare. He'd seen that look before, that silence built from fear. It stirred something old inside him, something he thought he'd buried miles ago. Years back, he'd lost someone to that same kind of pain, the kind people hide behind closed doors, pretending everything's fine. He'd promised himself never to feel that helpless again. Now, as Mara moved quietly between tables, eyes down, hands trembling just slightly, that old ache came rushing back. And Rex felt it. Not anger, but a deep, steady ache for justice. Outside, the sky was beginning to gray. Inside, the storm had already started. The laughter of the other bikers echoed softly in the background, but Rex wasn't part of it. His focus stayed on Mara. He watched her disappear into the kitchen, her shoulders slightly hunched, moving with the carefulness of someone trying not to be noticed. Then he saw him, the manager. A thick man with slicked hair and a permanent scowl, barking orders across the counter like a general in a war no one else cared about. His eyes carried that familiar cruelty, the kind that doesn't shout to be heard, only smirks when others flinch. When Mara passed by, he brushed her arm, too hard to be an accident, and muttered something sharp enough to slice the air. Her quiet apology only made his grin widen. Rex's jaw tightened. He'd seen monsters like that before, men who mistook fear for power. Hours later, after the lunch crowd had thinned, Rex sat alone at the counter, pretending to finish his coffee. The hum of the diner was low now, almost peaceful, until the manager shouldered past Mara again hard enough to make her spill a cup. The sound of shattering porcelain broke the silence. She bent down, whispering another apology, but the man's response came out like venom. That was it. Rex didn't need to see more. The bruise, the trembling hands, the silence. It all fit together like the last pieces of a puzzle he'd tried to forget. This wasn't stress. It was fear, the kind that traps people in silence. And as the storm rolled in outside, something inside Rex Malone finally clicked into place. That night, Rex couldn't shake the image of Mara's face, the way she smiled through fear, the quiet apology that never should have been hers to make. In his garage, the neon light flickered over rows of polished bikes. The hum of a lonely radio filled the silence. His club brothers came and went, laughing, talking, sharing plans for the next ride. But Rex barely heard a word. He just sat there, staring at the oil-stained floor, haunted by old ghosts, the kind he thought the open road had left behind. Years ago, he'd failed someone who needed help, and that failure had followed him ever since like a shadow that never burned away. But this time, he wouldn't look away. When the sun rose the next morning, the diner windows glowed gold in the early light. Mara arrived early, her hair neatly tied back, her face carefully made up, the bruise a little harder to see, but still there. She froze when she saw them. A row of motorcycles already lined up outside, chrome catching the morning sun. Inside at the counter, Rex sat waiting, calm, steady, and silent. When she approached, he looked up. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded, too quickly. The smile came, but it trembled at the edges. Before she could turn away, Rex spoke again. Not loud, not forceful, just firm, honest, and impossible to ignore. "I see it," he said softly. For a moment, she didn't breathe. Then her eyes filled, tears spilling before she could stop them. The kitchen door burst open. The manager stormed out, voice raised, ready to bark another order, but he froze when Rex stood up. The room fell silent. Every biker in the diner straightened, their presence heavy and unspoken. Rex didn't need to threaten. He simply walked forward, slow, controlled, every step draining the arrogance from the manager's face. When he finally spoke, his voice was low but sharp enough to cut through every lie in the room. "Hurting someone weaker doesn't make you strong," he said. "It makes you small." The manager's protest died halfway through. One look at the dozen men standing behind Rex and his courage dissolved. He muttered something under his breath and stormed out, his pride clattering to the floor like broken glass. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Mara looked up, eyes wet, and whispered a thank you so faint it barely left her lips. Rex just nodded. "You don't owe thanks," he said. "You just owe yourself a new start." For a few seconds, the diner stayed frozen, as if no one dared to move after what they'd just witnessed. Then, somewhere in the back, an old man began to clap. Slowly, others joined. The sound spread through the room like a soft heartbeat, steady and alive. The same people who had watched in silence only moments ago now looked ashamed and inspired. Word of what happened that morning traveled fast. By sundown, every corner of Maple Ridge was talking about the day the feared biker stood up for the bruised waitress. Overnight, Rex and his crew became something no one expected, symbols of quiet strength and unexpected kindness. Mara left her job at the diner soon after. She found work at a small cafe across town, a place where the owner treated her with respect, where laughter didn't hide behind fear. Sometimes Rex would stop by for coffee, not as a savior, not as a hero, just as a friend checking in, and each time she smiled. This time the smile reached her eyes. But the biggest change wasn't just in Mara, it was in Rex himself. For years he'd lived behind walls built from guilt and loss. Helping her had cracked something open inside. Something good he'd forgotten was still there. His brothers noticed it too. Soon the club began organizing charity rides for women's shelters, food drives, and small-town fundraisers. What started as one man's act of courage became a movement, one that softened the entire town's view of them. Months later, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Mara stood outside the diner, now under new management, and saw a familiar line of motorcycles rumbling past. The leader raised a hand. She smiled and raised hers in return, a quiet exchange of respect, gratitude, and something unspoken. That evening, Maple Ridge remembered not the roar of engines, but the silence that followed, the kind of silence where hearts heal and kindness speaks louder than fear. And as the bikes disappeared into the horizon, the message lingered in the air like a promise. Sometimes, kindness doesn't come wrapped in gentle hands. Sometimes it comes roaring in on two wheels, wearing leather scars and a heart that's finally learned to care again.